to have Dr. Eyal here to speak with us. As you will soon find out, he is not only a 100-year-old survivor, he also was once the head of surgery at Hebrew University and also fought in the War of Independence. He has quite a story. I'm going to start asking him questions, so you'll hear his story, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. Okay, and one last thing, we're going to try it all in English, but I may ask him some questions in Hebrew. If so, I will translate. Okay? Dr. Eyal. Okay, so you were born in Holland in 1925. Can you tell us about your childhood in Holland? What was it like being a Jew? Did you feel it was anti-Semitic? What was childhood in Holland like in those years?
There is nothing more difficult than to tell you or to tell who I was 100 years ago. There's nothing more difficult than to see reality. So the person I was, I must invent the story. I lived in a town, Utrecht, with a very small Jewish population, less than 1,000. And I went to school, not a Jewish school, there was no Jewish school, but only twice a week, when the Dutch people went on vacation, the pupils, on those days, I went to the Jewish religious school where we taught about Jewish tradition and history. And then my father, who was born in Galicia, but grew up in Germany and came to Holland only in the 1920s and started their business. But he was a Zionist, and he was active in the Zionist organization in Holland. Like my brother, who is 7 years older than me, he was active in the Zionist movement. And I, as a pupil, was in the Zionist movement. So for us to go to Palestine, at that time there was no Jewish state, was something that was obvious. This way.
Before my next question, just one detail. What language did your parents speak to you in?
Dutch.
Okay, next question. Initially, Holland was neutral in World War II.
What?
Holland was neutral in World War II. But then in the 1940s, Germany took over. So how did your life change when Germany took over Holland in 1940?
I have been many times asked to give lectures on my past and how I see what's going on. I was brought to Holland and talk to non-Jews, almost on 20 occasions, and also on radio and once in television. And every talk I started by showing two pictures. the famous picture from a Norwegian painter. And I would say, this is me. And then I would show them this picture. Not talking, not listening, not seeing. I would say to the Dutch people, that are you. When I hear on the radio or wherever it is that they ask, what will happen to the Yom HaShoah when there is no Holocaust survivor? Then I would say like this: you don't understand what the Holocaust is. You don't understand. And you don't understand what's in the Haggadah. HaChacham, HaRasha, VaHatam. This we ask ourselves every year. And therefore we are what we are. The Holocaust, the same thing. If you don't understand the Holocaust, you don't understand what now happens at the universities in America, where anti-Semitism is all of a sudden going. You didn't see what's going on in the world. You were not able to understand what happens to the Jews in Europe is what happened to them. You are your history. And if you don't understand that, that's not like not reading the Haggadah, the Pesach. But
I have a follow-up question. It might be hard to answer because scholars debate this. יש לי עוד שאלה שיש מחלוקת בין החוקרים. In Western Europe, Holland's numbers are worse than other countries. More than 50% of Jewry survived France and Belgium, and 70% of Holland's Jewry perished. Why do you think that is?
The people of the world lost their identity. When I talked in Holland, in schools, I would ask the children, who are you? What are you proud about? Are you proud about it that the Dutch fought 80 years against the Spaniards to appreciate freedom? Your children don't know. They know who is the best footballer. That's what's going on in Europe. In Europe, Eichmann said, well, in Holland, it wasn't, what did he say?
Difficult.
No, it was a joy. You almost didn't have to do exactly something special or use violence to gather the Jews. Because what happened to me, for Dutch people got a recognition by Yad Vashem and are the heroes. And you don't have any memory in your whole system that makes of those people heroes. Those are your heroes. Why this happened in Holland? Because they were very disciplined. The Germans gave orders, and the people didn't do anything against it. But why shouldn't we be surprised? There is nothing more difficult than to see reality. After World War II, no, and even before, the 1930s, when the Germans entered Austria.
Show me a speak though.
Everyone in the back over here. Down back there also.
When Hitler came into power in 1933, the first thing he ordered that the Jews in public places should be dismissed to go out. The Jewish professors and scientists and teachers in the German universities were dismissed. Hundreds and hundreds of Jews. How come that no one of their colleagues protested? Those are the intellectuals that should understand what's going on. The intellectuals are the most dangerous people if you want to understand what's going on. I have a list of those writers, famous writers, scientists, that committed suicide because they all of a sudden understood that the way they saw what's going on was not their world. Elie Wiesel lived in a shtetl in Eastern Europe. The way the Germans started to accumulate the Jews from a city was doing it gradually. First of all, the Jews in the city that were not born there were eliminated. So the Jews that lived there thought, no, this is not so bad what's going on. One of those Jews that was not born there, was sent to Auschwitz, and he escaped. He escaped and came back to the village. And nobody believed him. Nobody believed him. Why in Holland so many Jews were picked up? Jews in Germany didn't understand what it means, a pogrom in Russia. That is their problem. Jews in Germany didn't think that what is going on in Poland before the pogroms is something to do. They were Deutsche Bürger jüdischen Glaubens. That was Reform Judaism. Here it is. Sorry. I read you a couple of names of the famous, you don't know them, you don't, European culture. Tucholsky was a famous writer in Germany. Stefan Zweig, one of the famous writers. Franz Werfel, one of the famous European writers. Paul Celan, he was a Meshorer, very famous, one of the great German poets. Jacques Améry, a French writer. Primo Levi, an Italian. Jabotinsky, Ilya Ehrenburg. But those that I called on, they committed suicide. They all of us saw suddenly that the world they believe they are living in is not the world which is really. There is nothing more difficult than to see reality. Wishful thinking betrays your possibility to see reality. My father, who understood what's happening in East Europa, when the Germans invaded Holland, all of a sudden, Jews that had fled from Germany to Holland before the Holocaust, because, as you know, Kristallnacht, all what was happening before, tried to find all kinds of ways to flee Holland when the Germans were there. And he finally chose to go on a way which was not real, surreal, but then later on. When the Germans invaded in 1940, invaded Holland, the Dutch Jews didn't understand why so many Jews that were in Amsterdam committed suicide. Those were Jews that had fled Germany before the Holocaust. They saw the Germans as a different view, in a different way of realizing what's going on.
אתה רוצה לספר על האונייה שאבא שלך חשב?
עוד מעט. So, my father got a story that it would be able to board a ship that is going vanuit Holland to Sweden. From Sweden, there's a way to arrive in England. This was a totally crazy idea, but for somebody who understood our history in the Galut, and specifically what was going on in Eastern Europe, he would take all kinds of risks. And we had to board this ship that was somewhere in the northern part of Holland by another ship that would bring us to us. Together with my brother and my mother and 2 German Jews. We boarded a ship that would bring us to the ship that would bring us to England. The moment we were boarded on the ship, we were arrested by the Gestapo. This was a trick. I was freed, but had to go to the police every day to sign that I'm here, and my mother too. My brother knew to escape. Until the day.
And your father?
Huh?
What about your father?
And my father was put in prison. Why was he put in prison? Because the Dutch authorities thought that he has a lot of money somewhere hidden. He was for 2.5 years in prison until he was sent to Westerbork, from there to Theresienstadt, and from there to Auschwitz. I and my mother were brought after a couple of weeks to Westerbork. Westerbork was a camp created by the Dutch before the Holocaust. This camp was made for Jews who escaped from Germany, and the Dutch didn't want them to be spread on the general population. Westerbork, this camp, was, one is unable to use human common language about this make-believe situation. Until now, I don't know if you can understand that it is possible that you have a camp where people are living in conditions that you lie one above the other, and you are getting something to eat. Before the deportations to Auschwitz started. One day, the train would arrive with 1,000 Jews who were registered. What is your name? Who is your father? What is your profession? What would you like to do? Written there in a large compound. The next day, in the same place, was a cabaret. Jews who were performers, music players, had to perform songs that they had written and music in the camp. And the SS, the Germans, came to listen to the concert. The next day, from the same place, 1,000 people were sent to Poland. One day, reception. Next day, pleasure. Next day, to Auschwitz. Surrealistic. I had a problem with my tonsils. So they brought a surgeon from Amsterdam, and I was operated. My grandmother, who lived in Amsterdam, one day, the neighborhood she lived was closed, and they were recruited, and she came to the camp where my mother and I were. And she had a painful hernia. So she was taken out of the camp, brought to a small town in the northern part of Holland, operated, and when she was recovered, she was sent to Auschwitz. I was in the camp with my mother, and we were not sent to Auschwitz because we were one of the first people in the camp, and we had to help to build barracks in order to be able to accommodate thousands of people that were picked up and brought to the camp and later on sent home. I worked on all kinds of things. But I thought, I was 16 years old, what will happen if I come from the camp back and I have not finished my school and can go to the university? So I knew the Jew who was ordered to make a film and pictures of Westerbork in such a way that it could be sold to the general public how good the Jews were treated. And I said to him, maybe you can arrange for me that I can go to Amsterdam, because final examinations are held on this date also for the Jews. So he went to the commandant, the SS Obersturmführer Gemmerger, and asked him that he'll give me permission to go to do the examinations. So I got permission. And I went to Amsterdam with my yellow star and was picked up by the Germans, because that place, they were just gathering all the Jews to be sent to Auschwitz. So I showed them the permit they have. So they released me. So I did my final examinations. With this paper, this certificate, after the war, I entered university. Can you understand that? Every time I tell it myself, I cannot almost not believe. There is nothing more difficult than to see reality. Wishful thinking, that's הגורל, איך אומרים?
Fate.
The fate of our civilization. And then you understand those who say, what will happen to us? And the last Holocaust survivor, that is happening to us. You have to to understand what's going on. Year again. Otherwise, you can continue to ask, what will happen to us with the last Holocaust survivor? That's happening in this world.
אבא, אולי תספר על הבריחה מהמחנה?
Okay.
אפשר רק להרחיב את השאלה?
כן.
Can you explain how you survived and what happened to your brother, mother, and father?
My father, after 2.5 years in prison, came to Westerbork. He was sick. My mother was already sent to Theresienstadt. I was alone in the camp. And my father was then sent to Theresienstadt and there to Auschwitz. My mother survived Theresienstadt. After the war, she came back. My brother was picked up by the Germans because he went around Holland with falsified papers and on the train, when the Germans were controlling passports, things like that, they found out that it was falsified, and then he was sent to Westerbork, the camp where I was, in order to be sent to Auschwitz. At that time, fake was the religion. And in Westerbork, like I told you before, my grandmother was operated. I was operated. So I knew the camp doctor, a Jew. He gave my brother an injection so that they got 40 degrees fever. And you don't send sick people to Auschwitz. You make them healthy. So because he got fever, he was taken out from the transfer to Auschwitz. But he was 6 years older than me. And he said, Auschwitz, death. How did we know more about it? The Germans had confiscated the radios in the province we were living because they didn't want the population to listen to the BBC, hear the news. There was no television at that time, it doesn't exist. And there was one place in our camp,
Building structure.
a structure where they accumulated those things. And
The radios.
the radio, yes. And I, in one night, was able to go in this place and take a small radio with me. And then in the night, my brother and me and 2 other ones were going to listen to the radio in a way that My brother took his ear on the amplifier. I put my finger in behind as an antenna, and two other friends of mine stood on lookout. The Germans don't approach. Then we heard that the Allied forces landed in France, in Cherbourg, all those places. So then, one day, the day before you are sent, you get in your bag a written order that you have to be ready to go. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, you have to be there. So we got, my brother and me, this announcement that in the evening, you have to be ready. So my brother said, we are trying to hide in the camp. So that they don't hide in the camp. Where? Or to escape. To escape, you had to cut the wires. Now I had a friend who worked in a place where they were demolishing and fall down airplanes from the Allied forces in order to take apart the material for their own purpose. And from there, he brought me a wire cutter. Now, because I had been more than 2 years in the camp, I knew every corner, any place. So during daylight, I decided to cut the wire at a certain place. And that was a place, the camp was circumvented by wire, by water on three sides, and watchtowers. So I thought I'm going to cut here, where I have a view on the Germans, which are polishing, how do you go, walking
Guarding.
around.
Guarding.
Guarding. Yes. So when I saw that he is on the farthest place away, I cut 2 wires. And went away. And then I said to my brother, I have the wires. That day was the 3rd of September. That was a night which was totally dark, no moon, and rain. So when the siren was
It was ringing, it was going off.
it was a noise. So he went underneath the wire. Crossing the way between the barracks of the SS. They started to shoot. But we ran and we ran. When we heard noise on the left side, we went the right side. We heard noise on the right side, we went to the left side. We wanted to reach a small town called Assen because my brother knew somebody there which was a mixed couple. He was Jewish and she was a Goy. So he thought that they knew the place where they are living. So after we ran for hours and hours, falling into all kinds of things that
Getting hurt.
hurt and איך אומרים? התלכלכנו.
You got dirty.
Yes.
A lot of mud.
We thought we came at the place and we knocked on the door. And a woman opened the door. Come inside.
It was not that woman.
About 5 or 6 in the morning. We escaped at 9 o'clock. She didn't ask anything. But that was not the family that my brother thought. She's one of the righteous among the nations. So then, my brother said he knows somebody about 50 kilometers to the north who he was happening to sail with on the lakes. Then knocked on the door. They opened the door.
דבר יותר ברור, רבה.
They opened the doors. Gave us closets. But in Friesland, this is another people almost 2 meters high. I'm a small one. So I had to
fold.
to follow my trousers so that
זה בסדר.
they go there. And then my brother said he wants to reach Amsterdam because there he knows the underground. So the man in Hogeveen, that was helped us to come to the ship in the north, which would brought us to Amsterdam. So we went with the Hakalnoit,
מה זה היה?
small train.
רכבת קלה.
רכבת קלה, כן, רכבת קלה. To this place and helped us to board the ship where we could hide under the Sirot Hatzalah. How you say?
The lifeboats?
Under,
The
yes.
saving one?
Lifeboat.
Yeah. So we arrived in Amsterdam about 5 or 6 in the morning. And then we crossed Amsterdam from the west until the east, not being picked up. And there this woman that he knew from the underground lived on the 2nd floor. And this area of Amsterdam, he didn't have a bell that ringed the electricity. You had something you had to pull to ring the clock. And to open the door, they had a string from above, which pulls the trigger of the door, open it. Then we opened the door and rang. She called from above, Freddy! How possible that she knew that we are ringing? Well, she belonged on the...
Freddie is his brother.
How did she know? The underground knew what is going on. And that they are taking apart Westerbork, that they are liquidating Westerbork. And they could not imagine, knowing my brother, that he would not be able to escape. So there we stayed until the end of the war. But she had already 2 Jews. We lived in same circumstances which has been described by Anna Frank. She provided us with food, and we could hide when there was noise. We had double aron
closet.
double closets. And that's the way that I survived. And with my certificate of school, I entered the university.
Before the next question, did you know Anne Frank in Westerbork?
What?
Did you know Anne Frank?
No.
No.
It was a
She's
big
a-
place.
Okay.
She is, the way she is presented there is a fake. Because it should be written there that the Jews were בגדו, שההולנדים בגדו בה,
Traitors.
The trade.
Betrayed.
that the Dutch betrayed her. And so that she was killed. No, only the nice sides of it are correct.
Can you, well, so just understand, so you, your brother, and your mother survived?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Afterwards, you fought in the Israeli War of Independence. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
אפשר עם השאלה הזאת ונסיים ב-12.
Okay.
בסדר?
I have my own Haggadah. I went out of Egypt. I crossed the sea. And are living in a place opposite the Kotel.
In front
But I
of
want
the
to say something about how Jews in the middle of hell were fooling themselves in such a way that they could write a cabaret. Now, this is a picture from the cabaret.
קשה לראות, אבא.
What shows the picture? That a friend of mine, Leo Kok, draw. This is a cow. This is his azanaf,
Tail.
tail. And there sits a man who sits under the pooping part of the cow. And above is written, when one is shakua,
Immersed?
Deep.
deep in the shit, you don't have to sing. But underneath is written, we dedicate this performance to our SS chief Gemmeker. We still sing, notwithstanding, thank you for you letting us do that. This in the middle of hell. That's the way you fool yourself. You have no other way to live in this world. You have a way to understand what happened to the pogroms in Russia, in Poland, in Lita, That happened to you. But if you don't know that, you don't understand how was it possible to see what's going in the universities, the intellectuals.
אבא, אתה לא רוצה לספר להם על המלחמה? יש לנו רק כמה דקות.
Okay.
מלחמת השחרור, אני מתכוונת.
I came here with the Aliyah bait. You understand what is Aliyah bait? The illegal immigration. I was smuggled by the Jewish brigade from Holland to Belgium, from Belgium to France, Marseille, and there was an illegal ship which we boarded more than 1,000 people. "10 days in the Mediterranean, then picked up by the English, and then sent to
עתלית.
Gesher Bayam. Gesher Bayam. Those are the heroes that manned the ships that brought Israel home. Just give it around, let people see it. Just the pictures. That is your ships. That is your Agadah. You should see that as a part of your heritage, not something that you go to school and forgotten the next day. And this is a booklet written about my ship, which was almost not able to float on the sea. Here are the names of the people that boarded. Those people who later on went into the Palmach, in the Gish, in the army and fought. I was a soldier in the army, was sent to Gush Etzion. When the Arabs attacked us in Gush Etzion, I was wounded at that time. But what did the Arabs shout? Allah Akbar, Irbach el Yehud. God is great. Slaughter the Jews. But did my friends say, my fellow friends said, that didn't come from you? They said, עכשיו התחיל מלחמה. No, I said to them, זה לא מלחמה, זה pogrom. Those people that enabled the Oslo Accords, and Arafat, an arch killer, got a Nobel Prize. This is the world you live in. This is the world in your universities that let go on and try to explain in a logical way something which is totally illogical. This is what the intellectuals do. They explain everything so in a way that they don't have to talk, to make conclusions, that you have to pay for it. That is the way that all those great writers committed suicide. Because they understood that what's going on, that they didn't understand this world. They were living in a different world. There is nothing more difficult than to see reality. But the Jewish people understood that every year you have to tell the Haggadah. Every year. In order to know who you are. And not those people that say, what will happen? The next Holocaust survivor will be not be alive.
נסיים כאן, אבא.
Matam showed.
I want to thank Dr. Eyal and his daughter. What's your name?
טלי.
Say?
טלי.
Sally. Okay. I will also say I want to give everybody in the room a bracha. They should be able to give such a talk when they're 100 years old.
I want
It's really
to.
amazing.
I forgot to tell you.
Okay, please.
This Haggadah I got from the Hebrew school as a child. And the day we boarded the British brigade that brought us to Marseille, it was Pesach. And I held the Pesach in our clubhouse. And the people that participated in the Seder wrote their names. Those were on the ship with me. This is the Haggadah that survived the Holocaust, helped, committed with me the Aliyah bet to Palestine, in which I used every day of Pesach in our present situation. Harav Hadari was a friend of mine, Yeshivat HaKotel, helped me to repair, because it was not in good condition, the Haggadah. You must understand how rich you are. That is the purpose, should be the purpose of education.
תודה לכם.